Hello there, friends. Today I'm at the beautiful Corinne Jones Community Park, and the garden right behind me. It's a bit of a drizzly day, so I'm under the shelter, and I'm going to be reading an article with us today from HBR's book on empathy. Here is the book, and the title of today's article is What Great Listeners Actually Do. It's written by Jack Zenger and Joseph Folkman, and as always, I'll share a little bit about the authors before we start the article. Jack Zenger is the CEO, and Joseph Folkman is president of Zenger Folkman, a leadership development consultancy. They are co-authors of the October 2011 HBR article Making Yourself Indispensable, and the book How to Be Exceptional: Drive Leadership Success by Magnifying Your Strengths, published by McGraw-Hill in 2012. Great. Well, from these two authors, let's learn what great listeners actually do. Chances are you think you're a good listener. People's appraisal of their own listening ability is much like their assessment of their driving skills, in that the great bulk of adults think they're above average. In our experience, however, most people think good listening comes down to three things. 1, not talking when others are speaking. Number 2, letting others know you're listening through facial expressions and making sounds like And number 3, being able to repeat what others have said practically word for word. In fact, much management advice on listening suggests that people should do these very things, encouraging listeners to remain quiet, nod encouragingly, and then repeat back to the talker something like, okay, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying is blah 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 blah, and then repeat back to them or paraphrase back to them. However, recent research that we have conducted suggests that these behaviors fall far short of describing good listening skills. We analyzed data that describes the behavior of almost 3,500 participants in a development program designed to help managers become better coaches. As part of this program, participants' coaching skills were evaluated through a 360-degree assessment. We identified the individuals who were perceived as being the most effective listeners, i.e. the top 5%. We then compared the best listeners with the averages of all other people in the data set and identified the 20 characteristics that seemed to set those people apart. With those results in hand, we identified the factors that differed between great listeners and average listeners and analyzed the data to determine which characteristics their colleagues identified in them as the behaviors that made them outstanding listeners. So we found some surprising characteristics along with some qualities we expected to hear. We grouped them into 4 main findings. I'll share the 4 main findings and then we'll go through them in greater detail. Number 1, good listening is much more than being silent when another person talks. Number 2, good listening includes interactions that build up a person's self-esteem. Number 3, good listening is seen as a cooperative conversation. And number 4, good listeners tend to make suggestions. So let's go through each of those 4 now in more detail. Number 1, good listening is much more than being silent when the other person talks. To the contrary, people perceive the best listeners to be those who periodically ask questions and promote discovery and insight. These questions gently challenge old assumptions, but do so in a constructive way. Sitting there silently nodding does not provide sure evidence that a person is listening. But asking a good question tells the speaker the listener has not only heard what they are saying, but that they comprehended it well. Enough that they have comprehended it well enough to want additional information. Good listening was consistently seen as a two-way dialogue rather than a one-way speaker versus hearer interaction. The best conversations were active conversations. Number 2, good listening includes interactions that build up a person's self-esteem. The best listeners make the conversation a positive experience for the other party, which doesn't happen when the listener is passive or critical for that matter. If you're just silent, nodding your head, you are not creating a positive experience for the other party. Good listeners make the other person feel supported and convey confidence in the speaker. Good listening is characterized by the creation of a safe environment in which issues and differences can be discussed openly. Number 3, good listening is seen as a cooperative conversation. In the interactions we studied, feedback flowed smoothly in both directions, with neither party becoming defensive about comments the other made. By contrast, poor listeners were seen as competitive, as listening only to identify errors in reasoning or logic, using their silence as a chance to prepare their next response. That might make you an excellent debater, but that does not make you a good listener. Good listeners may challenge assumptions and disagree, but the person being listened to feels the listener is trying to help them rather than trying to win an argument. Number 4, good listeners tend to make suggestions. In the study, good listening invariably included some feedback that was provided in a way others would accept and that opened up alternative paths to consider. This finding somewhat surprised us, since it's not uncommon to hear complaints that so-and-so didn't listen, he just jumped in and tried to solve the problem. Perhaps what the data is telling us is that making suggestions is not the problem itself. It may be more about the skill with which those suggestions are made. Another possibility is that we're more likely to accept suggestions from people we already think are good listeners. Someone who is silent the whole conversation and then jumps in with a suggestion may not be seen as credible. Someone who seems combative or critical and then tries to give advice may not be seen as trustworthy. Now, while many of us think that being a good listener is like being a sponge that accurately absorbs what another person is saying, what these findings show is that instead, good listeners are like trampolines. You can bounce ideas off of them. And rather than absorbing your ideas and energy, they amplify, energize, and clarify your thinking. They make you feel better, not by merely passively absorbing, but by actively supporting. And this lets you gain energy and height, just like a trampoline. Of course, there are different levels of listening. Not every conversation requires the highest levels of listening, but many conversations would benefit from greater focus and listening skill. So consider which level of listening you'd like to aim for. And the authors give level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6. There are 6 different levels that the authors share. So let's go through them. Level 1. The listener creates a safe environment in which difficult, complex, or emotional issues can be discussed. Safe environment. Level 2. The listener clears away distractions like phones and laptops, focusing attention on the other person and making appropriate eye contact. This behavior not only affects how you are perceived as the listener, it immediately influences the listener's own attitudes and inner feelings. Acting the part changes how you feel inside. This in turn makes you a better listener, so it plays on itself. Level 3. The listener seeks to understand the substance of what the other person is saying. They capture ideas, ask questions, and restate issues to confirm that their understanding is correct. Level 4. The listener observes nonverbal cues such as facial expressions, perspiration, respiration rates, gesture, posture, numerous other subtle body language signals. And it is estimated that about 80% of what we communicate comes from these signals. It sounds strange to some, but you listen with your eyes just as well as with your ears. Level 5. The listener increasingly understands the other person's emotions and feelings about the topic at hand and identifies and acknowledges them. The listener empathizes with and validates those feelings in a supportive, non-judgmental way. And lastly, number 6, the listener asks questions that clarify assumptions the other person holds and helps the other person see the issue in a new light. This could include the listener injecting some thoughts and ideas about the topic that could be useful to the other person. However, good listeners never hijack the conversation so that they or their issues become the subject of the discussion. Each of these levels builds on the others. Thus, if you've been criticized for offering solutions rather than listening, it may mean you need to attend to some of the other levels, such as clearing away distractions or empathizing, before your proffered suggestions can be appreciated. We suspect that in being a good listener, most of us are more likely to stop short rather than go too far. Our hope is that this research will help by providing a new perspective on listening. We hope that those who labor under an illusion of superiority about their listening skills will see where they really stand. We also hope the common perception that good listening is mainly about acting like an absorbent sponge will wane. Finally, we hope all will see that the highest and best form of listening comes in playing the same role for the other person that a trampoline would play for a child. It gives energy, acceleration, height, and amplification. These are the hallmarks of great listening. Hopefully you gained some great tips from that. There are a lot of good points in there, so perhaps go back and listen once more to make sure you got things. Were you employing great listening? Thank you.